We should also, of course, consider, as Jonathan Kirsch does, the story of Amnon and Tamar. Tamar and Amnon, after a sordid affair with Bathsheba, King David arranges for the death of her husband so that he might marry her. Shortly thereafter, Amnon, David's oldest son and heir apparent to the throne of Israel, falls desperately in love with his half-sister, Tamar. Amnon feigns illness and asks the king to send Tamar to nurse him back to health. When she arrives, he rapes her and throws her out in the street. King David hears about this outrage, but does nothing. Let's look at what Kirsch writes. The argument defies not only biblical law, cursed be he that lieth with his sister, but common sense too. Abraham has already lied to the king of Gerar by telling him that Sarah is his half-sister, or is his sister when, as far as we know, the biblical text, she is his wife. Amnon lusts after his sister, but he certainly does not love her before or after the rape. Amnon betrays his real feelings toward Tamar when the rape is over, and he brusquely orders his servant to throw her out of the house. "Put this woman out from me." It's the standard English translation of what Amnon says, but a more accurate rendering of the biblical Hebrew reveals that he regards Tamar as nothing more than an object of perverse and momentary pleasure. "Put this thing out from me" is what Amnon actually says. What is really happening at the moment before the assault is a cunning, if desperate, ploy by Tamar to talk her way out of being raped. "Speak unto the king," says Tamar to her brother, thus holding out the possibility that she would sleep with him under different circumstances. But why is the king so passive? Perhaps it is because David is too guilt-ridden over his own sexual misadventures to chastise his son for doing much the same thing, as one scholar suggests. Again, more issues in this text and in the undertext, which we have to dive into and ask these probing questions. Agree or disagree? Is that what it's about? Is David guilt-ridden? According to one ingenious reading of the biblical text, that means it's an issue. David is tipped off to his son's real intentions toward Tamar when Amnon describes the kind of food he wants his sister to prepare for him. The specific word that Amnon uses in his plea to King David, levivot, is usually translated into English as bread or cakes or dumplings. But the Hebrew word levivot is really an erotic pun that plays on the Hebrew word for heart, lev, and evokes images of arousal and excitement. In fact, the delicacy that Amnon desires to eat from his sister's hand is rendered as hearty dumplings. But one Bible critic bluntly renders the Hebrew word as libido cakes. Is that a correct rendering? That's yet another issue. How do you understand that specific term? Does David know what Amnon really wants from Tamar? Amnon is subtly asking permission of David to have his way with his sister. Do you buy that? Agree? Disagree? And by agreeing to send Tamar to Amnon's house, the king is not only tacitly approving a sexual encounter of some kind between brother and sister, but delivering her into the hands of his son, her rapist. Indeed, one scholar finds it difficult to believe that David himself, the author of such subtler intrigues, would have been completely taken in by such transparent designs as this one. Yet Tamar discovers that even the most glorious and powerful king in the history of Israel does nothing to prevent or punish the outrage. Tamar disappears into her brother's house after the rape, never to be seen or heard again in the streets of Jerusalem or the pages of the Bible. Her rape sets into motion a chain reaction of assassination, insurrection, and civil war. If the rape of Tamar amounts to a test of the king's authority, then David fails the test miserably. After the assassination of Amnon, Absalom puts himself beyond the reach of David. In the end, as the story continues, David has to abandon his own palace from Absalom's rebellion in panic and in terror. David musters an army, goes to war against Absalom. Absalom's death seems even more poignant when we recall that his sister remains in his household back in Jerusalem, a desolate woman now utterly lacking a protector or a provider.